Du Zhong smiled faintly. Beside them, Wu Haihua grinned, revealing his stark white teeth, and chuckled with a sinister, scheming tone. Are you sure there's no problem? Despite his moral issues, he is indeed a PhD in traditional Chinese medicine. You've never studied TCM, and you don't even recognize all the herbs. How can you compete with him? These three categories are all his strengths. Don't act impulsively. Old man Qin sighed and shook his head, his expression full of doubt. In his impression, Du Zhong was an extremely steady young man who rarely lost his temper. What had gotten into him today? Don't worry, old man Qin. It's fine. Du Zhong looked at old man Qin with confidence. Seeing this, old man Qin could only nod and say no more. Good. Since you've agreed, let's prepare. Seeing that Du Zhong showed no intention of backing down, Wu Haihua straightened up and said, but since it's a competition, it must be fair, impartial, and public. How do we ensure that? Since you dared to agree, fairness is already out of the question. But it must be impartial and public. Since the competition is in the hospital leadership should act as impartial judges. Agreed. As for Wu Haihua's idea of fairness, Du Zhong inwardly scoffed. With impartial judges, it must also be public. Since it's public, all available doctors and nurses in the hospital must be present. And Gu Muir must be there. No problem. Du Zhong responded with a disdainful smirk. Wu Haihua grinned widely, a glint of triumph flashing in his eyes. He could already picture himself winning the match, receiving the admiration of everyone in the hospital, and Gu Muir willingly throwing herself into his arms. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Excellent. Wu Haihua snapped out of his daydream, excitement evident in his voice. I'll notify everyone in the hospital now. The competition will begin shortly. As you wish. I'll be waiting. Maybe you should just admit defeat. Wu Haihua stared fixedly at Du Zhong, as if trying to see right through him. He never expected that Du Zhong would also know bone setting, and with even better results than his own. Wu Haihua's face darkened. He suddenly felt like he had lifted a rock only to drop it on his own foot. A feeling that drove him mad. Still, he wasn't worried. Earlier, he had specified successful treatment, and he had indeed succeeded. Both took 10 seconds, it was just a matter of effectiveness. This round should be a draw. The orthopedic physicians immediately went to examine the two patients. After their assessment, they all looked at Du Zhong and Wu Haihua with astonishment. Their eyes filled with a hint of admiration. I announced the result. First round, Du Zhong wins. After some discussion, one of the senior orthopedic physicians declared loudly. What? Wu Haihua shouted in fury. Why does he win? We both took 10 seconds and we both succeeded in treatment. It should be a draw. Boos immediately erupted from the crowd. Although both had treated the patients, the results were different. Of course, Du Zhong had won. Wu Haihua was just splitting hairs. Du Zhong actually only used 1 second. The senior physician explained with a wry smile. In fact, the moment the time was first called, the patient's lumbar dislocation was already corrected. In the remaining 9 seconds, he realigned the patient's entire spine. Every problematic area was completely treated. As these words fell, the garden fell into dead silence. Everyone stared at Du Zhong, mouths agape in shock. 1 second to correct a lumbar dislocation? 10 seconds to realign all 24 vertebrae? What kind of skill was that? The group of orthopedic physicians also wore bitter smiles. During their initial examination, they had found other issues with the patient's spine, with the lumbar dislocation being the most severe, but upon re-examination, all those problems had vanished. There was only one conclusion: Du Zhong had treated everything in those 10 seconds. This unimaginable outcome left them shaking their heads in forced smile. A whole team of orthopedic physicians, outdone by a hospital security guard. How had they even gotten to where they were? Wu Haihua, who had been so confident, now looked utterly dismayed. He whipped his head around to glare fiercely at Du Zhong, eyes blazing as if he wanted to devour him. Du Zhong cast a disdainful glance at Wu Haihua, his expression icy cold. This is only the beginning. Both Du Zhong and Wu Haihua thought this simultaneously, though with vastly different meanings, each carrying a chilling intensity. Losing one round is just one round. You're bound to lose the next two, Wu Haihua thought resentfully. The result stood. First round, Du Zhong wins. This outcome made Elder Qin squint with laughter, his face showing a trace of amazement, but even more appreciation. Suddenly recalling something, his expression shifted to one of realization. Gu Muir, however, stared wide-eyed at Du Zhong, her beautiful eyes round with disbelief, as if she were looking at an alien. Is there anything he can't do? Anything he isn't skilled at? Huge question marks popped up in Gu Muir's mind. She suddenly realized she understood Du Zhong less and less. Just when she thought she knew all about him, It turned out to be only the tip of the iceberg. It seemed you could spend a lifetime trying to understand him and still not grasp the whole picture. This thought made Gu Muir breathe a slight sigh of relief. After all, Du Zhong had won. When the result was announced, a peculiar emotion stirred within her, as if Du Zhong's victory brought her special joy. Du Zhong merely smiled faintly at the outcome. As a super soldier with top-tier survival skills in the wild, bone setting was a necessity. His bone setting technique ranked first in the entire military. For Wu Haihua to dare challenge him in this was pure suicide. Before the patient left, Du Zhong kindly bid farewell and offered some precautions. Second round. Unable to bear the sight of Du Zhong's triumphant demeanor after winning the first round, Wu Haihua immediately called out. According to the rules, the second round would test memorization of medical classics. As a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, Wu Haihua had long memorized many texts. While Du Zhong hadn't even glanced at the hospital's denji, it was safe to say Wu Haihua had this round in the bag. I don't believe you can win this one, even if you have a phenomenal memory, so what? If you haven't memorized it, you haven't memorized it. This round, I've got it locked down. Wu Haihua sneered inwardly. Choose the books, Du Zhong said, looking at Wu Haihua's gloomy face without a trace of fear. I've already brought them. One of the orthopedic physicians stepped forward. It turned out Wu Haihua had instructed them to bring 2 medical classics when notifying them. The physician produced 2 books. One was Treatise on Cold Pathogenic and Miscellaneous Diseases, and the other was Tang Tu Go, Songs of Formulas. At the sight of these 2 books, the observing doctors and nurses were stunned. Tang Tu Go was relatively simpler, with rhythmic verses that made recitation easier. But Treatise on Cold Pathogenic and Miscellaneous Diseases was a different matter. This book systematically analyzed the causes, symptoms, stages, and treatments of cold-induced diseases, establishing the 6-meridian classification principle for diagnosis and treatment, and laying the theoretical foundation for principles, methods, formulas, and materia medica. Such an encyclopedia of cold-induced and miscellaneous diseases, with its extremely complex content, was notoriously difficult to memorize systematically. Ordinary people simply couldn't manage it. As a TCM doctor, Wu Haihua might be capable, but for Du Zhong, who had no background in TCM and had never even opened this book, memorizing it was downright impossible. Those in the crowd familiar with the book turned sympathetic eyes toward Du Zhong, perhaps because of his stunning victory in the previous round. Even Elder Qin frowned deeply. As an authority in TCM, he knew full well how arduous memorizing the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases was. Unless one had put in immense effort or achieved mastery, it was nearly impossible, and Du Zhong fell into neither category. The situation was extremely unfavorable for him. Gu Muir also wore a worried expression. Even with her background in a TCM family, she couldn't recite the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases word for word, let alone Du Zhong. You have to win. Gu Muir clenched her fists tightly. Though she knew Du Zhong stood little chance, she cheered for him fervently in her heart. 2 classics, 2 tests. The one who makes more mistakes loses. Wu Haihua took the 2 books, pointed at Du Zhong from a distance and sneered. Before we start reciting, neither of us can look at the books. Wu Haihua clearly remembered Du Zhong's first day in Elder Qin's consultation room. Du Zhong had flawlessly recited every herb and formula prescribed to all the patients. This indicated an exceptional memory. No, damn it, a photographic memory. Wu Haihua thought with bitter jealousy. He certainly wouldn't give Du Zhong the chance to skim through the books for short-term memorization. He wanted to catch him off guard. He wanted victory. That's not acceptable. Elder Qin shook his head. Du Zhong has never studied medicine and hasn't even glanced at these books, while you're already thoroughly familiar with them. Not allowing him to look at the books is unfair to Du Zhong. Exactly, Gu Muir chimed in. You're a doctor of TCM. How can you suppress Du Zhong like this? Upon hearing that Du Zhong had never seen these books before, the onlookers showed expressions of surprise and pity. They had expected another thrilling contest, but who would have thought Du Zhong hadn't even read the books? This round was over before it began. Wu Haihua was sure to win. Sensing the crowd's sympathetic gazes, Du Zhong smiled faintly and said, "Let's begin." Everyone was taken aback, including Wu Haihua. Du Zhong wasn't conceding, he was actually urging Wu Haihua to start. Overestimating yourself. Wu Haihua let out a sly chuckle, then handed over the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases. This time I'll judge. Elder Qin stepped forward, taking the book from Wu Haihua with a stern expression. Then I'll begin. Wu Haihua smirked coldly. As Elder Qin opened the book, he started reciting. Chapter 1. On Pulse Diagnosis. A stream of obscure text flowed from Wu Haihua's mouth, faster and faster, with Elder Qin turning the pages to keep up. Chapter 2. Discriminating Pulses. Wu Haihua continued smoothly, Chapter 3. The 6 Qi Governing the Hours. 3 chapters in a row without a single pause left the audience gasping in admiration. They watched Wu Haihua with excited expressions, but as his recitation sped up, their excitement gradually turned to awe. Though aware of Wu Haihua's credentials, they had thought reciting parts would be impressive enough. They never expected him to have the entire book memorized. Throughout Wu Haihua's recitation, Elder Qin remained silent but occasionally marked errors in the text with a pen, recording every mistake Wu Haihua made. He sighed inwardly. Though Wu Haihua had poor character, his foundation in TCM was solid. What a pity. Chapter 29. Discriminating Women's Diseases by Pulse and Symptoms. As he reached the final chapter, Wu Haihua's lips kept moving, but his eyes turned to Du Zhong, a look of pride on his face that couldn't conceal the Taoxin in his gaze. In contrast, Du Zhong kept his head down, eyes closed, motionless as if meditating. Only when Wu Haihua uttered the last word did Du Zhong look up. His eyes met Wu Haihua's proud face and the intense Taoxin in his gaze. Your turn. Wu Haihua looked at Du Zhong, curling his lips into a Taoxin smile. Du Zhong responded with his usual faint smile and stepped forward. That smile made Gu Muir's heart skip a beat, her pretty face flushing slightly. It seemed that even if Mount Tai collapsed before him, Du Zhong's confident smile would never fade. 13 errors in total, all marked by me. Elder Qin held up the book, showing it to the crowd. Then he said, I'm old, and my eyes aren't what they used to be. Let Muir take over for Du Zhong's recitation. Hearing this, Gu Muir stepped up and took the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases. Muir, don't miss or omit anything while recording. I'll be watching, Wu Haihua said with a deceptively sunny smile that carried a chill. But there's no need. He won't be able to recite it anyway. Gu Muir snorted coldly, her gaze fixed on Du Zhong as he stepped forward. Not just Gu Muir, everyone in the park had their eyes on Du Zhong. Could he do it? He hadn't even read the book. How could he possibly recite it? Security captain, maybe you should just admit defeat. You can't win this. Coming up here will only embarrass you. A young nurse in the crowd called out. You've studied medicine. Yeah, you might as well admit defeat. There's no point in continuing. Let's just move on to the next round. Voices of persuasion rose and fell, one after another, reaching Du Zhong's ears. His expression remained as calm as still water, unperturbed. Gu Muir's gaze was still fixed on Du Zhong. Like the other nurses, she wanted to advise him not to continue. If he did, the outcome would still be a loss. Since the result was already inevitable, what did it matter to admit defeat? Besides, he had already won one round. There was no need to confront Wu Haihua head-on in a situation where defeat was certain. Just then, Du Zhong turned his head and looked toward Gu Muir. Seeing this, Gu Muir secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed this fool was considering admitting defeat. Making that decision wasn't so foolish after all. As Gu Muir was inwardly rejoicing, Du Zhong's next words completely stunned her and everyone present. Are you ready? I'm about to begin. Such an ordinary sentence left almost everyone frozen in place. The doctors and nurses who had initially felt sorry for Du Zhong now shook their heads in disbelief. Did a grown man really need to be so concerned about saving face? This was clearly asking for humiliation. Ready? Du Zhong asked again, as if everything happening around him had nothing to do with him. Gu Muir bit her lip tightly and nodded emphatically. Ready? Then I'll begin. Du Zhong smiled slightly, and Gu Muir hurriedly flipped open the book. Chapter 1. The Method of Assessing Pulses. Question. How can one diagnose the state of qi, blood, and organs through the pulse? The master replied. The pulse reflects the condition of qi and blood. When qi and blood are abundant or deficient, the organs will show corresponding imbalances. When both qi and blood are strong. As soon as he opened his mouth, Du Zhong began reciting fluently, his pace sometimes fast, sometimes slow, with a rhythmic cadence entirely different from Wu Haihua's frantic recitation. Chapter 2. The Method of Differentiating Pulses. Old Man Qin's eyes lit up as he looked at Du Zhong, as if witnessing something unbelievable. Chapter 3. The 6 Qi Governing the Divisions of Time. As Du Zhong continued reciting, the onlookers gradually widened their eyes in astonishment, their expressions shifting from sighs of pity to stunned disbelief. Chapter 7. Pulse Patterns and Treatments for Summer Heat Damage. It wasn't until he reached the 7th chapter that Gu Muir, looking surprised, finally took a pen from her doctor's coat pocket and made a mark on the page. By this point, the crowd was completely dumbfounded. The nurses who had urged Du Zhong to admit defeat were now gaping, their mouths wide enough to swallow pebbles. Their eyes were filled with shock and a hint of suspicion. Could it be that Du Zhong had, contrary to Old Man Qin's claim, actually studied the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases? Otherwise, how could he recite it so fluently? But he wasn't a medical student. While Wu Haihua's recitation was somewhat understandable, why would a security team leader spend his free time memorizing such texts? Chapter 9. Pulse Patterns and Treatments for Dampness Diseases. When Du Zhong reached the 9th chapter, Gu Muir moved again, then looked up at him with a puzzled expression, as if she had discovered something hidden. Chapter 11. Pulse Patterns and Treatments for Wind-Cold Damage. Chapter 15. Chapter 16. Unlike medical students who might pause or hesitate, Du Zhong recited smoothly, his tone rising and falling as if he were not merely reciting but delivering a lecture. It was as if he were Zhang Zhongjing himself, imparting the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases to his students. The most astonishing part was that he didn't even glance at the book, yet his recitation surpassed that of top medical students. The entire garden fell into dead silence. No one dared to speak. Everyone listened quietly to Du Zhong's recitation. Those with better memories even silently followed along, using Du Zhong's words to recall the more obscure passages. These individuals were undoubtedly the most shocked. At that moment, a question lingered in everyone's mind. Had Du Zhong truly never read this book before? If so, how could he recite it so flawlessly? If not, was he deceiving them, playing the fool to catch the wise? Chapter 29. Du Zhong noticed the crowd's shock, astonishment, and disbelief, but it did not disrupt his rhythm. Although his pace varied, when he uttered the final word, the total time he took to recite the entire book was exactly the same as Wu Haihua's, only with a more natural cadence. He's finished. The onlookers snapped back to reality. Now that was an experience. Simply reading the text pales in comparison to such a recitation. The surroundings grew lively as everyone discussed Du Zhong's recitation style and why he had claimed not to have read the book. Impossible. You've studied medicine. Wu Haihua, his face already grim, suddenly pointed at Du Zhong and accused, "You're a fraud." Old man Qin also stepped forward, looking at Du Zhong with a puzzled expression, his eyes reflecting the same doubt as Wu Haihua's. Facing their accusations and the crowd's confusion, Du Zhong merely smiled without offering an explanation. Instead, he looked at Wu Haihua and asked, "Did you challenge me because I haven't studied medicine? Is this what you call fairness?" Wu Haihua's face turned bright red with embarrassment. He couldn't answer the question without implicating himself. In the end, he could only glare at Du Zhong with resentment. "Old man Qin, come take a look." Gu Muir, who had remained silent until now, spoke up, pointing incredulously at the book in her hands while her gaze remained fixed on Du Zhong, her expression one of utter amazement. "What's wrong?" Old man Qin frowned and walked over. Taking the book, he flipped through it, and his eyes widened in shock. "This can't be." Old man Qin looked up sharply, his eyes locked on Du Zhong, his face filled with awe. "The errors in their recitations are exactly the same." "What?" His words were like a bombshell, instantly causing an uproar among the crowd. "You've never read the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases before. The reason you could recite it is because you memorized the entire text from Wu Haihua's recitation. Isn't that right?" Old man Qin stepped closer to Du Zhong, staring intently as he asked. "Exactly." Du Zhong nodded without denying it. That was precisely what he had done. While Wu Haihua was reciting, Du Zhong had been deep in thought, memorizing every word. Otherwise, how could he have dared to accept Wu Haihua's challenge? The irony was that Wu Haihua had suggested going first. Even if he hadn't, Du Zhong would have insisted on it. That was his trump card. A wave of shock swept through the crowd. The idea was simply unbelievable. How could anyone memorize the entire treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases, over 30,000 words, after hearing it just once? Impossible. I only recited it once. How could he remember it all? Wu Haihua's face darkened as he pointed at Du Zhong. "He's a fraud. No one could possibly do such a thing." Du Zhong responded with nothing more than a disdainful smile. Old man Qin scrutinized Du Zhong carefully. He felt he needed to reevaluate this young man. In his long life, he had misjudged people only twice. Once by overestimating Wu Haihua and now by underestimating Du Zhong. The ability to remember everything upon hearing it was far more challenging than memorizing from reading. Reading engaged both the eyes and the ears, as the mind silently repeated the words. Hearing, however, relied solely on the ears, making the task at least twice as difficult. Memorizing from a single reading was already remarkable, but memorizing from a single hearing was unheard of. "This round doesn't count. I have another book here." Wu Haihua clenched his teeth tightly and raised a copy of Tang Tu Gu, asterisk formulas in rhyme asterisk. "I refuse to believe you can memorize this after hearing it just once." He glared at Du Zhong, his expression grim. "This time you'll be the judge." Wu Haihua pointed to an orthopedist and tossed the book to him. Du Zhong understood that Wu Haihua no longer trusted Old Man Qin or Gu Muir. Although the facts were clear, Who could say for sure where Wu Haihua had made mistakes or how many errors there were? After the orthopedist took the book and flipped it open, Wu Haihua looked coldly at Du Zhong and said, "You claim to have a good memory, don't you? Well, let's see if you can recite whatever I recite." Without waiting for Du Zhong's response, he immediately began reciting. Tang Tu Go is a medical text containing over 300 commonly used traditional Chinese medicine formulas, categorized into 20 sections such as tonifying, releasing the exterior, purging the interior, and inducing vomiting. Each formula is summarized in a 7-character verse with brief annotations, making it a widely circulated work on prescriptions. Compared to the treatise on cold pathogenic and miscellaneous diseases, Tang Tu Go is somewhat easier to memorize due to its consistent 7-character lines and rhyming patterns. However, the challenge lies in the fact that each formula is unique, and a single misstep in reciting an ingredient could render the entire prescription ineffective. Beyond the formulas, one must also recite the annotations for each, which posed the greatest difficulty. Exterior releasing formulas. 1. Ephedra decoction. In ephedra decoction, cinnamon twigs are used. Wu Haihua began reciting. Because of the rhyming verses, his tone somewhat imitated Du Zhong's, with slight variations in rhythm. 2. 3-nut decoction. As he grew more comfortable, Wu Haihua gradually sped up, as if this round tested not only accuracy but also speed. 3. Hua Gai powder. After finishing each verse, Wu Haihua clearly stated the annotations before coldly moving on to the next. When he finished the 49th formula, a sly glint flashed in Wu Haihua's eyes, and he abruptly changed the content. Differentiating yin and yang syndromes. Nature. How profound. The differentiation of yin and yang syndromes must not be neglected. Throughout the inner canon, it is said that all diseases arise from excessive emotions, improper diet. Old Man Qin, Gu Muir, the judge, and some bystanders immediately furrowed their brows. Wu Haihua was no longer reciting Tang Tu Gu but had switched to discrimination on internal and external damage by Li Dongyuan, one of the 4 great physicians of the Jin and Yuan dynasties. Yet Du Zhong, who had his eyes closed, seemed completely unaware, listening quietly all the while. Gu Muir wanted to intervene and stop Wu Haihua, but Old Man Qin held her back. "It must be a coincidence. Let's hear him recite." Old Master Qin murmured softly, his eyes fixed intently on Wu Haihua. Gu Muir nodded and refrained from intervening further. Warm pathogens ascend and attack, first affecting the lungs, then reversely transmitting to the pericardium. The lungs govern qi and are associated with defense, while the heart governs blood and is linked to nourishment. Although the differentiation of defense, qi, and blood share similarities with cold damage disorders, the treatment principles differ significantly. The frowns around deepened. Wu Haihua had changed the content again, this time to Yi Tianchu's treatise on warm fever disorders. The 7-seed powder treats men with wind deficiency, dim vision, diminished essence qi, and infertility replenishing deficiencies. Ingredients: Schisandra, Vitex, Cuscuta, Plantago, Rubus, Dendrobium, Dioscorea, Rehmannia. Another shift. Sun Simiao's 1,000 gold prescriptions. Even those without medical training began to sense something amiss. Everyone furrowed their brows but did not interrupt Wu Haihua, instead casting anxious glances at Du Zhong, who remained with closed eyes, seemingly memorizing. Wu Haihua was relentless, switching between over a dozen medical texts, selecting only fragments. Some from the beginning, some from the middle, and others from the end. I refuse to believe you can memorize all this. Even if you studied medicine before, how could you have memorized every single one of these texts? Prepare to admit defeat. Wu Haihua sneered inwardly. "I'm done reciting. Your turn." Wu Haihua glared at Du Zhong, taunting. "Let's see if you can truly recall everything after just one listen." Du Zhong opened his eyes, cast a calm glance at Wu Haihua, and stepped forward. "Let's begin." Without waiting for Gu Muir's reminder, he started reciting. The onlookers, more curious about the outcome than the process, watched intently. Could he really do it? If he recited everything flawlessly, the only word to describe him would be monster. Under everyone's expectant gaze, Du Zhong began reciting in the same rhythmic cadence as before, but noticeably faster. Yet, each word was enunciated clearly to avoid any misunderstandings. Exterior releasing formula, ephedra decoction. Soon, he reached the 49th formula, and the crowd grew tense. Could he match Wu Haihua? Gu Muir clenched her fists, Old Master Qin stared intently, and Wu Haihua watched like a hawk. Differentiating yin and yang syndromes. How profound. The differentiation of yin and yang must not be neglected. Throughout the inner canon, it is said that all diseases arise from excessive emotions, improper diet. A wave of shock swept through the crowd. Du Zhong had recited every word exactly as Wu Haihua had, without a single pause, as if it were his own. Asterisk impossible. This can't be. Asterisk Wu Haihua shook his head, his face pale. It must be a coincidence. But Du Zhong shattered his denial. Warm pathogens ascend and attack, first affecting the lungs, then reversely transmitting to the pericardium. Yi Tianxi's treatise on warm fever disorders. Not a single word out of place. It can't be. Asterisk another coincidence. He must have known it already. Asterisk. Then Du Zhong delivered the final blow. The 7-seed powder treats men with wind deficiency, dim vision, diminished essence qi, and infertility. Sun Simiao's 1,000 gold prescriptions. Wu Haihua staggered back, clutching his chest, and collapsed to the ground. He really recited it all. The onlookers were stunned. An impossibility had unfolded before their eyes, a prodigy beyond belief. Is he even human? As Du Zhong finished the last word, applause erupted across the garden. Every gaze filled with awe and respect. Did he really memorize everything after one listen? A nurse stammered, wide-eyed. Old Master Qin took a deep breath, his eyes gleaming with admiration. I never thought you'd actually do it. Gu Muir approached Du Zhong, scrutinizing him as if he were a marvel beyond comprehension. Amid the buzzing discussions, the orthopedic doctor in charge of evaluation struggled to decide and consulted others. After a lengthy deliberation, he announced with difficulty, "This round is a draw." Both recited identical content. Boos echoed. Most believed Du Zhong had won, but they accepted the outcome. Wu Haihua sighed in relief. He hadn't lost yet. There was still one final round. Du Zhong remained indifferent to the result. He welcomed challenges. His goal was to crush his opponent's spirit. A swift defeat was too merciful. He preferred to offer hope before delivering despair. One draw, one loss. Du Zhong is already undefeated. Even if Dr. Wu wins the last round, it'll still be a tie. But Dr. Wu is a certified PhD in traditional medicine, while Du Zhong hasn't even started. At this point, it's anyone's game. The murmurs infuriated Wu Haihua. I can't lose. Not even a draw. With his status and reputation, losing to Du Zhong would be irreparable. The third round was a must-win. Shall we proceed to the third contest? Old Master Qin stepped forward, his expression stern as he looked at Wu Haihua. Bring it on. Wu Haihua felt a pang of insecurity at Du Zhong's calm demeanor. But he couldn't back down in front of everyone. He had to win. Du Zhong, are you ready? Old Master Qin asked with a smile. Always prepared. Du Zhong replied, echoing a motto from his Special Forces days. Good. Old Master Qin nodded approvingly. Under Old Master Qin's arrangement, 2 patients with acute gastroenteritis were brought in. For fairness, any physicians present may check their pulses to confirm the similarity of their conditions. Several doctors stepped forward to examine the patients. Their conditions are comparable, suitable for the contest. One confirmed, and the others agreed. Since everyone has verified, the third contest begins now. As this round involves diagnosis, both participants may proceed simultaneously. Old Master Qin declared. Du Zhong and Wu Haihua approached their respective patients. In traditional medicine, diagnosis relies on observation, listening, questioning, and pulse-taking. Observation was Du Zhong's forte, but pulse-taking posed the greatest challenge. He had never formally learned it. How could he decipher pulse patterns? At Old Master Qin's signal, both began. Wu Haihua, with years of experience, swiftly inquired about symptoms and proceeded to check the pulse. His proficiency drew no surprise. On the other side, Du Zhong mimicked the process, asking questions and attempting pulse-taking. But when he placed his fingers, laughter erupted around him. Is that how you take a pulse? He can't even locate the pulse. Haha. He's a total novice. He's got the hand positions all wrong. He's pressing the wrong spots. He stands no chance against Dr. Wu this round. Seasoned physicians chuckled among themselves. Even Old Master Qin couldn't help but smile, and Gu Muir covered her mouth to stifle her laughter. In pulse-taking, the wrist is divided into 3 regions: inch, bar, and cubit. The index finger should rest on the inch, the middle finger on the bar, and the ring finger on the cubit. Du Zhong had them reversed. Seeing this, Du Zhong shrugged helplessly. He had never learned pulse-taking, neither in childhood nor from Old Master Qin. His actions were merely for show. He already had a plan. Acute gastroenteritis, in traditional medicine, is often caused by exposure to damp heat toxins or cold damp invasion due to improper living habits, leading to spleen and stomach impairment and disrupted qi flow. Could you describe your symptoms? Du Zhong asked after his faux pulse-taking. Sudden stomach pain, nausea, and a sour taste in my mouth, the patient replied. Du Zhong nodded, then examined the tongue coating. Meanwhile, Wu Haihua, after completing his diagnosis, quickly wrote a prescription and handed it to Old Master Qin for evaluation. Old Master Qin then looked expectantly at Du Zhong. After glancing at Wu Haihua's prescription, Du Zhong stood and declared, "My prescription is the same as his." The crowd was baffled. What did he mean? Was he giving up? Or admitting defeat? Wu Haihua beamed triumphantly. "Did you think copying me would force another draw? Don't forget. I wrote it first. Plagiarism means you lose." He laughed heartily. "You've lost. What are we competing in?"
Du Zhong asked calmly.
"Isn't it obvious? Diagnosis," Wu Haihua retorted, relishing his perceived victory. "If the patient isn't cured yet, why are you celebrating?"
Du Zhong sneered.
"Since we're comparing diagnoses, shouldn't we see whose prescription works better?" A wave of stunned murmurs instantly erupted around Du Zhong as he sang. How could the same condition and the same prescription produce different results? With identical prescriptions and identical effects, Wu Haihua had already won. What tricks could possibly be played at this point? Seeing the confident expression on Du Zhong's face, Wu Haihua suddenly felt that mocking that annoying face would be quite entertaining. "Fine, since you want to compete, I'll make sure you understand why you've lost." Wu Haihua chuckled. His thoughts aligned with everyone else's. How could the same medicine possibly yield different results just because it passed through Du Zhong's hands? Moreover, since this was about treating illness, the medicine had to be decocted and administered immediately. Wu Haihua considered himself an experienced traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, highly skilled in the art of decoction. Brewing medicine was like cooking, it required precise control of heat and timing. The duration for high heat, medium heat, and low heat each had strict requirements. Even a slight deviation could compromise the potency. In this regard, unless Elder Qin personally assisted Du Zhong, Wu Haihua was absolutely confident that no one present could surpass him. Comparing medicinal potency is fine, but Du Zhong doesn't even know how to decoct medicine. Elder Qin hesitated before speaking. "Anyone but you is free for him to choose," Wu Haihua immediately retorted. "Then let Mu'er do it."
Du Zhong.
Elder Qin raised an eyebrow and shifted his gaze to Gu Mu'er. "No problem," Du Zhong nodded. Having Gu Mu'er assist was ideal, though the outcome would be the same regardless of who helped. "All right," Gu Mu'er agreed. "I'll go prepare the herbs now." Just as she was about to leave, Wu Haihua spoke again. "No need to trouble yourself with such a trivial task," he sneered. "Who knows if you'd shortchange the ingredients for this pretty boy? We can't exactly bring a scale to verify, can we?" After stopping Gu Mu'er, Wu Haihua took out his phone and called the hospital's pharmacy. "The pharmacy staff don't know about our competition, so the herbs they provide will be absolutely fair," he declared triumphantly after the call. Gu Mu'er fumed at Wu Haihua's behavior, snorted coldly, and ignored him. As the minor dispute concluded, a pharmacist arrived with 2 bags of herbs and a decoction stove. After soaking the herbs, lighting the fire, and setting up the stove, the 2 packages were handed to Du Zhong and Wu Haihua. Du Zhong weighed his bag and found the amount precise, not a gram more or less. The decoction process began. Wu Haihua watched Gu Mu'er bustling about and felt a surge of excitement. Though it irked him that she was helping Du Zhong, it also gave him a chance to defeat both of them simultaneously. The thought of showcasing his superior skills in front of Gu Mu'er thrilled him. The decoction process was neither too long nor too short. During this time, the observing doctors and nurses wandered between the hospital building and the garden, torn between their duties and the final showdown. They were eager to witness the outcome but wary of neglecting their patients. Throughout what felt like an eternity, Gu Mu'er carefully tended to the simmering herbs, with Du Zhong standing by her side, waiting for the moment the medicine was ready. Meanwhile, Wu Haihua occasionally glanced at Gu Mu'er, then at Du Zhong, his eyes filled with resentment yet a sense of satisfaction, as if warning Du Zhong that his hatred would ensure Du Zhong's utter defeat. Du Zhong and Gu Mu'er paid no attention to Wu Haihua, not even sparing him a glance. After what seemed like a long time, Wu Haihua hurriedly removed his pot from the heat. "It's done," he announced, pouring a bowl of the decoction before turning to Du Zhong and Gu Mu'er. At that moment, Gu Mu'er also spoke up. "It's ready." She lifted her pot, preparing to pour the medicine. "Wait!" Du Zhong suddenly reached out to stop her. "What?" Gu Mu'er was taken aback, wondering if she had made a mistake. But then she remembered Du Zhong knew nothing about decocting medicine and dismissed the thought, chiding herself for being overly nervous. "Let me take it from here," Du Zhong said with a smile, gently moving her aside. Gu Mu'er stared at him, utterly bewildered. What was he up to? Just then, the doctors and nurses who had been keeping track of time returned to the garden, forming a tight circle around the competitors. Under everyone's gaze, Du Zhong did something that provoked laughter. He placed the pot in front of himself and began singing a solemn, eerie tune that no one could understand. "I thought you had some secret technique, but it turns out you're just putting on a mystical act," Do you really think this will change the medicine? What a joke! Wu Haihua mocked, bursting into laughter. The crowd chuckled in confusion, unable to comprehend Du Zhong's actions. Only Elder Qin, who had remained silent, suddenly stiffened. He quietly approached Du Zhong, his face alight with excitement. Yesterday, when Du Zhong treated the child, he had suspected something but couldn't confirm it. Now he was certain. The melody Du Zhong sang was an ancient form of sonic energy, a long-lost art he had yearned to witness his entire life. This was a technique of ancient Chinese medicine, using sound waves to channel energy from the universe into the decoction. Infused with this intangible, miraculous energy, the medicine's efficacy would be greatly enhanced. Elder Qin was so moved he nearly shed tears, having finally encountered what he had sought for a lifetime. The crowd was too focused on Du Zhong to notice Elder Qin's reaction. Everyone was discussing Du Zhong, but he remained as composed as a monk chanting scriptures, filtering out all the comments and ridicule. This was indeed sonic energy incantation, a method from ancient healing arts. The same prescription might yield identical results in others' hands, but not in Du Zhong's. This was his greatest advantage in the third round. Du Zhong never acted impulsively or without certainty. The moment Wu Haihua proposed the 3 rounds, Du Zhong had been fully confident. All that remained was execution. As the song ended, Du Zhong turned around. "It's ready. Pour the medicine," he said to the perplexed Gu Mu'er with a smile. "Oh." Gu Mu'er stepped forward, eyeing Du Zhong as if he were a strange creature, and poured a bowl of the decoction. "No matter how much you pretend, the results will speak for themselves." Wu Haihua sneered. "Let's see if your mystical tricks actually work." The murmurs died down as everyone awaited the final outcome. Wu Haihua went first, supporting his patient as they drank the entire bowl. "How do you feel? The pain's gone, right?" he asked confidently. "It's not as painful as before, but I still feel weak, and my mouth is sour," the patient replied, their brow slightly relaxed. "This illness takes time. How could one dose cure it instantly?" Wu Haihua retorted before turning to Du Zhong. "Your turn." Du Zhong took the bowl from Gu Mu'er and approached his patient. "Will this medicine make me hallucinate and sing like you?" the patient joked. Laughter erupted once more. Elder Qin scanned the crowd, a mysterious glint in his eyes. "Maybe after drinking his medicine, you'll even start dancing," Wu Haihua added, sneering at Du Zhong. The garden echoed with laughter, as if it were a festive gathering rather than a serious competition. "Dancing?" Du Zhong looked surprised, then smiled. "Maybe you will." Amid the mocking gazes, he handed the bowl to the patient, who drank it all. "I don't feel anything," the patient said, looking bewildered. "I knew it. How could the same medicine for the same condition produce different effects?" "The patient isn't reacting, which means the decoction method was flawed and weakened the potency. Du Zhong has really messed up this time." Not only did he lose to Dr. Wu, but he also dragged Gu Mu'er down with him. Sighs of disappointment filled the air. Most spectators, expecting a thrilling contest, shook their heads and began to leave. Even Gu Mu'er bit her lip anxiously, feeling responsible if they lost. Only Du Zhong remained calm, while Elder Qin's eyes gleamed with insight. "Ha!" Just as the crowd was dispersing, Du Zhong's patient let out a surprised sound, drawing everyone's attention back. "I'm cured!" the patient exclaimed in amazement. "After a few rumbles in my stomach, the pain vanished. I don't feel weak anymore, and the sourness in my mouth is gone." To everyone's astonishment, the patient stood up and began walking and even hopping around effortlessly. The onlookers were stunned. The same illness, the same medicine, yet entirely different outcomes. Wu Haihua's medicine had only alleviated the pain, while Du Zhong's had cured the patient completely. How was this possible? In that moment, everyone was speechless. Wu Haihua rushed to examine Du Zhong's patient, only to collapse to the ground, pale-faced, after confirming the results.